MeMonster.
Chapter 126. Dungeon and gate were a phenomenon that were ranked based on the energy output they emitted. However, the phenomena known as rift was different. They didn't have any ranking system and were simply called based on the size of the rift, such as rift, large rift, great rift, and supermassive rift. The reason behind it was because it was impossible to assign a proper rank to a rift. While there's a possibility that an SS rank monster would appear in a great rift, there's also a possibility that nothing would happen in a supermassive rift. In fact, the Great Rift that occurred 5 years ago was predicted to destroy a country because of its tremendous energy wave. However, when hunters entered the Great Rift, they didn't meet any monsters and only found a core. The hunters safely escaped the Great Rift without any casualties after destroying the core. The lowest grade rift phenomenon was virtually impossible to enter, so it was treated no different from normal gate and dungeon phenomenon. However, the Great Rift that caused enormous casualties every 2 to 3 years, and the supermassive rift that occurred only once in the history of mankind, which had left a big scar on the United States, were both closely monitored by the association. The appearances of the Great Rift this time around had already been announced half a year ago, and countermeasure had been prepared. First of all, the new Murim League expressed their intention to participate in the raid. As a result, the opinion that Murim people must be controlled had completely disappeared from the world. However, the important part here was that currently Murim people on Earth were divided into 2 factions, namely the new Murim League and China's Murim Hoyangho. On top of it, both factions were currently entangled in a dispute regarding the ownership of Mugong. And because of the solution that was proposed by New Murim League, the ownership of Mugong would be given to the side who accumulated greater merit than the other in the Great Rift. So when 6 months passed and the Great Rift was opened, what an amazing sight! All Murim members of China's Murim Hoyangho have expressed their intention to participate in the raid. Do you see their numbers? There were around 500 people on their side. It's great. It's really great. Everyone from Murim Hoyangho lined up in front of the Great Rift, as if they were going to bet everything on this Great Rift. And Bang Ho-win has finally shown himself as a terrorist who disappeared after causing a terror incident 4 years ago. Quite a lot of people expressed their concern regarding his participation in the raid. However, there were even more voices that said Murim expert Bang Ho-win is a talented person befitting the rank of at least SS rank, and would be a great addition to the raid. A lot of stories come and go. Some said that Bang Ho-win would wash away his image as a terrorist using this Great Rift. Some said that he came to show the power of Murim, and others said he came to absorb the new Murim League. Not all of them were right. Smiling Shadow, a man who works in the shadow of Murim Hoyangho, quietly looked at Bang Ho-win. He was standing still alone. As expected from a country who proclaimed themselves as a country that does not negotiate with terrorists, the President of the United States didn't share a single word with Bang Ho-win. However, the International Supernatural Phenomenon Association and the International Hunter Association were constantly coming to see him. Go away. However, Bang Ho-win chased every single one of them away. He didn't find any need to entertain them because once he succeeded in absorbing the power of Xiao Yungyun, he would never see them again anyway. I think it's better not to be too harsh. A hunter dispatched from the Chinese side advised Bang Ho-win. In the first place, China's goal was to completely absorb the people of Murim from both sides, including Bang Ho-win. If you don't like it, you should go away too. Of course, there's no way his words would be heard by Bang Ho-win. Smiling Shadow shifted his gaze towards the 500 Murim people from their side. They were all social misfits who cannot forget the old way and accept the present. Even after 5 years had passed, these people still clung into the barbaric laws of the strongest. In some ways, their memory about Murim was being beautified. Just because they were living on Earth where the ratio of normal people was higher, they were mistaking themselves as a great being. However, once they returned to Murim, Smiling Shadow was sure that the majority of Murim people who stood here wouldn't be able to compete for the title of the strongest. In case they really were able to return to Murim, Bang Ho-win would also be there. That means Murim will be filled with chaos. Experts who already achieved the realm of Hunkyung were rare even in Murim. Then, what about a Hunkyung expert who can also use sorcery by Murim common sense? It was an impossible feat. Bang Ho-win was able to achieve it only because he was extorting the purest energy from countless female experts around Murim. In other words, all female experts who were damaged by him were the cleanest and the purest women in the whole world. Only after the victim count increased by a lot, Dharma had come to enforce justice on Bang Ho-win. He destroyed Bang Ho-win's Nigong before throwing him into a place where all trash like him were locked up. Y'all be running around with trash like you for the rest of your life, and then die a lonely death. That's how Supreme Dharma dealt with every worst criminal in history. He didn't simply kill them, he destroyed their Nigong and let them rot for eternity before dying in the midst of trash-like humans just like themselves. However, Supreme Dharma didn't know. Bang Ho-win was able to survive and climb up from the bottom of that hellish place, and as soon as he saw the sunlight once again, he unleashed his resentment onto the world. That incident was what the world refers as the worst terrorism in history of Europe. And 4 years since that terrorizing act, which was the present time, he had become way too strong. He had reached the realm of Hunkyung by absorbing numerous old experts' Nigong. If Supreme Dharma was still alive, he could have defeated him once again, however, he's already dead. On the other hand, the new Murim League only brought 100 people, however. The spirit of Seol Yungyeon, the lord of New Murim League, seems to overwhelm all other Murim people. Numerous tanks, helicopters, and armed vehicles were patrolling in the vicinity of the Great Rift. However, amidst the tense situation, Seol Yungyeon was still as peaceful as ever, as if she wasn't affected by her surroundings at all. Her figure, which was calmly looking at the rift entrance with a sword stabbed to the ground in front of her, was more reassuring than any sturdy shield. However, the one smiling shadow looked forward to was not Supreme Chinma but Yu Seodam. He was the man who defeated Supreme Dharma and saved Supreme Chinma. Smiling Shadow could see that man stood behind Seol Yungyeon and stared at the Great Rift with pure white eyes that were impossible to discern. It was matter of course that the US didn't only get help from Murim people in case of life or death like the Great Rift. They also employed a whopping number of 800 hunters on this expedition. Amongst them, there were a significant number of S rank and 5 SS rank. In total, with soldiers, there were around 2,000 people involved in this expedition. Since it was impossible for electronic devices to work inside the rift, the tanks and armored vehicles would only be guarding around the vicinity of the Great Rift. The only things that the military bought into the rift were communication devices made with ether technology that cost around millions of dollars per device. C3 We will enter. The sight of numerous people slowly entering the Great Rift was captured in a camera worth tens of millions of dollars. As soon as they walked through the portal, they found themselves in a green, dense forest that seems to extend till the other side of the world. And they also saw numerous skeletons that rattled on the ground. A skeleton. A frightening voice resounded from the communication device. Skeleton was a monster under the category undead monsters. Even though it was weak and slow, it was almost impossible to kill it with a firearm. Even when its limbs were cut off, every part of it would continue to move separately. It was a very troublesome monster to deal with. On top of it, crazy. Why are they so fast? Unbelievable. There were some skeletons captured in the video which had a speed similar to an A-rank body strengthening type superhuman, and some other skeletons were even equipped with armors and exhibited abilities of S rank or even higher. Death Knight. Death Knight, it was a monster that hardly appeared on Earth. Even so, most people know about them very well. They were widely known as honorable knights who returned from death. Every time a Death Knight swung its sword, flame would shoot out from its sword. It was a technique called aura diffusion commonly seen in the fantasy genre, but unfortunately it was such an advanced technology that it was unknown to Earth's superhuman. At that time, the Murim experts began to step out. Skeleton died in one blow. What? How did he do that? Murim experts were people who specialized in killing humans, and although they had never met a skeleton before, they knew that they had to use their shapeless energy to aim at the space between their joints to kill them. It was a skill that could only be acquired once they became an ultra-peak expert. Thankfully, most of the Murim experts who came to this place were experts who had achieved the ultra-peak level. Just like the experts, Yu Seodam also found it easy to deal with the skeletons. Even though he didn't have any Nigong and techniques like the experts, his holy conversion F-rank skill worked very well against the skeletons. How it works better than I expected. Currently, Yu Xiaodam was wearing his old first-grade ether suit and ether sword. He deliberately left the items he got from the other world in his inventory. Even so, when he merged the holy power with his ether blade, the skeletons were cut off easily. Of course, he didn't have enough magic power to use the holy conversion continuously, but it was okay since very soon he would only be pretending to fight. While Yu Xiaodam was cutting several skeletons, everything within the range of 30 m in front of Xiao Yungyun was cut into two right after she swung her sword once. It was only a normal swing, but that swing was powerful enough to disintegrate all the skeletons. As the unbelievable scene was broadcasted through the video, the morale of the expedition members soared. It was only natural. The Great Rift was a phenomenon that rarely occurred in the long history of Earth. However, each and every one of them was always followed by numerous casualties from the expedition team. So, when the members of the expedition witnessed the power of the mighty SSS rank Xiao Yungyun, they couldn't help but to feel reassured. Suddenly, the ground trembled, followed by a loud rumbling sound. In the distance, they could see Bang Howin soaring up into the air as he left a crater on the ground. My God! That strength isn't something that can be exhibited by a normal SS rank. Every time Bang Howin leaped up to the air, he left a crater on the ground. It was only then that the expedition members realized. He must be at least at SSS rank level. I can't believe it. They're a new SSS rank amongst the Murim people. An exclusive report. It was not surprising that the people who were watching through the video from the outside were in a frenzy. After all, it was the emergence of a new SSS rank. Having made dozens of craters by himself, Bang Howin leaped into the sky once again and plucked the giant skeleton's head with his bare hands and kicked it towards the skeleton wyvern in the distance. Then, as soon as he landed on the ground, he shot a fierce glare and smiled towards Xiao Yungyun. However, Xiao Yungyun didn't even look at him. Her gaze was focused only on Yu Xiaodam. Xiao Yungyun could see that Yu Xiaodam was observing Bang Howin's every move just like a predator looking at its prey. How does he really intend to fight against a Hunkyung expert? For the past half-year, Yu Xiaodam has been undergoing training directly under her, and throughout the training, he always said that he would beat Bang Howin down. However, Xiao Yungyun couldn't completely believe him since he was only able to hold out for 3 minutes against her. But looking at Yu Xiaodam's eyes, Xiao Yungyun realized for sure that he was the same man who defeated the Supreme Dharma, a Shinhukyung expert, and saved her from her loneliness. She also convinced that Yu Xiaodam was really trying to kill Bang Howin in this place today. How is it, did you find anything? Yes, there's a minute trace of dimensions on one of the equipment possessed by that man, and it seems like there's one major problem in order to use it again. The relic of Dharma's black sword. It was a sword that allowed you to cross over to another world. But from the information that Yu Xiaodam received, it was said that Dharma had already gone through 2-dimensional movements and the sword was now essentially useless. Is that so? Yu Xiaodam raised his head and looked at the sky. Not only him, everyone had no choice but to turn their heads. It was because something slowly appeared at the horizon, dyeing the whole sky with a dark energy. That something had only bones left with no flesh and skin. Its body stretched over 50 m long with 3 pairs of wings on its back. A diamond-like claws could be found on its every limbs. Moreover, on top of its head, 5 broken horns were menacingly pointed to the sky. The creature's blue noble eyes fluttered as if it was scanning the entire world before letting out a silent roar. It may feel like it was a soundless roar. However, it was a roar in the frequency that human hearing could not detect. To put it in the language of the Murim people, it was a lion roar technique that had reached the extreme. This is Command Center. We announce the appearance of Bone Dragon, estimated grade SSS plus rank, Godspeed. Chapter 127. Approximately 32 years had passed since the Great War. Throughout those years, numerous monsters had appeared on Earth. Yet the number of appearances of SSS-rank monsters can be counted with 2 hands. Despite that, mankind remembers every single one of them. It was because every time an SSS rank monster appears, it only disappears after creating a new record in the history. However, today was different. Even though an SSS rank monster had appeared before mankind, there were two SSS rank experts who stood proudly at the forefront. It was Xiao Yungyun and Bang Ho-win. But unfortunately, Bang Ho-win didn't have any intention to fight against the Bone Dragon. There was no reason for Bang Ho-win to deal with the Skeleton Dragon. From now on, we will divide into two teams, Binding Team and Tanking Team, superhumans capable of long-distance attack. As the order from the command center flowed out from the radio, Bang Ho-win started to conceal his energy as much as possible. He was sure that he could beat Xiao Yungyun as long as he could land one surprise hit on her. Yes, let's stand still. Bang Ho-win smiled as he slowly circulated his Nigong. However, suddenly, emergency, an expert of Murim suddenly attacking allies. What? As Bang Ho-win turned his head in a hurry, he saw Xiao Yungyun staring straight at him. In this situation, he could no longer able to execute his surprise attack plan. He tried to calm his breath as he looked to the distance. Smiling Shadow was randomly swinging his black ether blade towards American hunters and experts from New Murim League. However, his attack wasn't dangerous at all. It was a blow that wouldn't even hinder normal people. In other words, he was deliberately causing conflict so that Murim Hoyangho would fight against both New Murim League and the hunters. What's wrong with that kid? Bang Ho-win couldn't understand why Smiling Shadow was suddenly acting like that. However, what he had to do doesn't change in the slightest. It was to capture Xiao Yungyun. Suddenly, a lump of energy flew towards Bang Ho-win's neck. Thanks to his instinct, Bang Ho-win was able to sense it and hurriedly raised his arms in order to block it. However, because it was such a powerful blow, blood began to drip from his forearm. Lord of New Murim League has fought back against Murim Hoyangho. China's Murim Hoyangho has betrayed the expedition. All combatants are allowed to counterattack. Fucking terrorists, I knew it. From the beginning, there were several criticisms against Murim Hoyangho's participation in the expedition. It was mainly because their leader, Bang Ho-win, was someone who was responsible for the terror act 4 years ago. However, because the United States was faced off against the notorious Great Rift, they need all the help they could possibly get. That was why they didn't stop a powerful expert like Bang Ho-win from stepping on their soil. The United States planned on detaining Bang Ho-win immediately after the Great Rift expedition was over. There was no way Bang Ho-win wasn't aware of the United States plan. He just didn't care about it since he planned to go directly to Murim as soon as he absorbed Xiao Yungyun's spirit. However, because of the stunt that Smiling Shadow pulled, his plan has come to a naught. Rotten kid. Bang Ho-win's strength hadn't fully recovered just yet. That was why he tried to gain the upper hand through a surprise attack, but things went wrong. New Murim League is an ally. The tiny ball launched by the Smiling Shadow had become a huge avalanche. Bang Ho-win was being pushed back by Xiao Yungyun slowly and steadily. Whatever, it's all over once I defeat Xiao Yungyun. Yu Xiaodam, who was watching the fight between Xiao Yungyun and Bang Ho-win, was greatly taken aback. Nunam, please step back. Yu Xiaodam realized once again that not everything in the world would go according to his plan. He was expecting Bang Ho-win to launch some kind of surprise attack, but the timing of the attack he had in his mind was completely off. The Bone Dragon is still flying, damn it. Yu Xiaodam's attack using other people's power was quite famous. When he was still an F-rank hunter, there was an incident where he had manipulated an S-rank monster to kill a runaway hunter. He also employed the same tactic when he killed Supreme Dharma. That's why Bang Ho-win tried to attack Yu Xiaodam before he could do anything, because there's no guarantee that Yu Xiaodam wouldn't use his signature move again. Fortunately, Bang Ho-win's surprise attack plan had failed. On top of it, the Bone Dragon was also paying attention to another place. However, Yu Xiaodam still couldn't believe that Xiao Yungyun was the one who initiated the fight, not Bang Ho-win. Yunam, step back now, I will fight him. Yu Xiaodam wanted to fight against Bang Ho-win. Even though his plan went wrong, he believed that he would find another way somehow. However, Xiao Yungyun shook his head. She was aware just how hard UC Autumn had trained in the past 6 months. She could never forget his figure who shed tears and blood while sparring against her. However, in the end, he was only an S rank, and after Seol Jungyun saw Bang Ho-in today, she reached a conclusion. Against that guy, Autumn can't last long. Seol Jungyun knew that Autumn wanted to fight against Bang Ho-in because he was worried about her safety. She felt good thinking about it. However, Seol Jungyun was aware of Autumn's plans. That is why she knows just how reckless he is. He was planning to take that risk in order to keep her safe. So naturally she couldn't take a step back here and hide. It was for Autumn's sake. His Seekgong is definitely dangerous. Bang Ho-in's Seekgong was a very unique Mugong. It was a questionable technique that could not be called Mugong with certainty. In Murim, there are so many different types of gong, but techniques like Seekgong, which manipulates someone else's mind, are unprecedented. It could easily shake the mind of an expert in the same realm. Thinking about the nature of the Seekgong, Seol Jungyun felt that it was natural for Autumn to be worried. But Seol Jungyun was confident that everything was going to be okay. I know the activation method of Seekgong, so don't worry. When Seol Jungyun spoke confidently, Autumn had no other choice but to accept it. Amongst all kinds of women he had met while traveling through numerous worlds, Seol Jungyun was greater and stronger than anyone else. That said, Autumn had no intention of leaving her alone. I will help too. Autumn was still only an S rank. He was nothing but a mosquito in front of a Hunkyung expert who had been fighting for a lifetime. Even so, he didn't have any plans to back off even if Seol Jungyun told him to. He picked up the radio and talked to Celeste, who was waiting outside the rift. The operation is going well. You don't have to worry. You also don't have to come inside. Okay. Originally, Autumn didn't want to bring anyone from another league. However, Celeste insisted that she wanted to come, so in the end, he was forced to bring Celeste. As she hadn't taken in a rank promotion test yet, she wasn't allowed to enter the Great Rift. That was why she was patiently waiting outside. Autumn felt that that part was rather fortunate. If she ran into a monster like that, Celeste could die in an instant. Meanwhile, when things turned out quite to his liking, the corner of Bang Ho-in's mouth lifted up. Stupid bitch. If Seol Jungyun insisted on fighting together with Autumn, it was better for him. Inside the complex mind of a human, there's always a place for an emotion called love. It is a place that is originally empty but is gradually filled up by people they grew up with. It could be family, siblings, friends, or lastly lovers who occupy the greatest importance. However, inside the mind of humans, there were numerous gaps that could be penetrated. The heart and mind dominating technique used by Bang Ho-in penetrates into such gaps and fills all the spaces with him, forcing his target to be completely obsessed with him. It was truly a martial art worthy of being called an evil sorcery. Actually, instead of Mugong, it was more apt to call it mind control. However, no one in Murim was aware of that fact. When two Hunkyung experts finally clashed against each other, sparks scattered everywhere as the air around them trembled. With his fist raised, Bang Ho-in looked at the eyes of Seol Jungyun. However, she didn't make any eye contact with him. Instead, she was looking at the tip of his toes. That's right, didn't you say that you know about me, but unfortunately, it's useless. Bang Ho-in, who had achieved the state of Hunkyung, could use a variety of methods to apply the heart and mind dominating technique on the other person. The best thing to do was to make direct contact with the opponent's skin and make eye contact. However, he could also utilize it with just a simple hand gesture or action, albeit only for a few moments. Honestly, in terms of pure skills, Seol Jungyun was leaps and bounds above Bang Ho-in. It was because sorcery was completely unsuitable with the state of Hunkyung. However, the current fight was more advantageous for Bang Ho-in because Seol Jungyun had to pay attention to every minor hand movement made by Bang Ho-in while fighting a psychological warfare without even making eye contact with him. Bang Ho-in kicked the ground and approached Seol Jungyun like a bullet that had been fired. He realized that Seol Jungyun was unable to read his movements properly, so he tried to target her blind spot as much as possible. He mainly aimed for her upper body such as her shoulders, eyes, and head, and performed a simple hand movement in accordance with the timing of his attack. Seol Youngyeon, whose pupils became blank, momentarily returned to her original state in less than 0.1 seconds. But in the fight between experts, that brief gap was enormously large. Now, Bang Ho-won reaches towards Seol Youngyeon's head. And in that moment, a gunfire suddenly exploded, and a bullet found its mark on Bang Ho-won's right arm. The pain Bang Ho-won felt wasn't that great, but something was strange. His skin that had been grazed by the bullet started to harden like a stone. Even though his skin would return to normal as soon as he circulates Nigong towards those parts, it was still very annoying. Right, I think it was something called magic. Right after Bang Ho-won nullified Yu Seodam's magic, Seol Youngyeon swung her sword towards him. In front of the incoming attack, Bang Ho-won bent his knee to avoid it and counterattacked by sending an uppercut towards Seol Youngyeon's upper body. Seol Youngyeon was forced to face the upcoming attack. However, because she was wary of eye contact, she chose to take a step back instead of blocking it. Bang Ho-won, who expected those moves, swiftly moved towards Yu Seodam. The Sixth Sense skill has been activated. Yu Seodam couldn't see any sign or even a preparatory move from Bang Ho-won. When he came to his senses, Bang Ho-won was already stretching his hand towards him. However, thanks to his fights against Seol Youngyeon for the last 6 months, it was possible for Yu Seodam to avoid Bang Ho-won's attack through intuition alone. Yu Seodam rolled to the ground as he scattered grenades into the air. Even with grenades exploding around him, Bang Ho-won still swung his fists towards him. However, when Seol Youngyeon approached him and aimed her sword towards his arm, Bang Ho-won swiftly pulled his fist away and retreated to the side. Both of them are very annoying. Bang Ho-won intuitively realized that Seol Youngyeon and Yu Seodam had never fought together. It was only a matter of course, since there's no way a Hyunkyung expert would fight side by side with someone who has barely become an expert. But strangely, the two of them worked together really well. They knew each other's weaknesses well and covered each other's gaps. But the fight continued to be one-sided. It was impossible for Seol Youngyeon to fight properly when she couldn't even see Bang Ho-won's movement properly. She had to pay close attention to even his simple hand movements. In addition, Yu Seodam had to give up any plan he had and run away as soon as he felt that Bang Ho-won would aim for him, because if Bang Ho-won really put his mind into it, he could catch Yu Seodam in less than 10 seconds. Seol Youngyeon suffered a heavy blow to her abdomen as she barely blocked Bang Ho-won's fist with the tip of her sword. Seol Youngyeon coughed a mouthful of blood as she tried to block another attack from Bang Ho-won. However, she couldn't do it. The attack landed on her shoulder, and then a wave of Nigong dug into her body and twisted her Nigong and blood. Seol Youngyeon's right hand trembled. For her, who mainly wielded the sword with her right hand, the blow on her right arm was affecting her quite a lot. But she couldn't let the sword go. She hurriedly wielded it with her left hand. I can still do it. Wounds keep piling on Seol Youngyeon's body. She reassured herself that she could definitely hold on, because she knew if she kept enduring like this, a chance would surely come. She was very well aware that Yu Seodam was unable to land a good hit at Bang Ho-won. It means that the only person who could hurt him was her. To some extent, she knew the plan that Yu Seodam had created. However, since the battle took place before they could defeat the Bone Dragon, it seems unlikely for him to execute that plan. If that's the case, Seol Youngyeon had to personally find a way. Just a little bit more. But deep down, Seol Youngyeon was still searching for the way to beat Bang Ho-won. Just by hearing his light finger flick, her body stops moving. If she makes eye contact with him, perhaps all of her heart would be taken away by him. In Murem, there's no record of a Nigong that could stand up against Bang Ho-won's Seekgong that digs into the depths of mind, because techniques like Seekgong had rarely appeared throughout history. And then suddenly an idea popped out in her mind. It was such a ridiculous and absurd idea, but somehow Seol Youngyeon felt that it would be possible. It was an intuition of Hyunkyung exp. No, it was a woman's intuition. After taking a deep breath, Seol Youngyeon raised her sword with her left hand and pointed it towards Bang Ho-won. Even after several rounds of battle, Bang Ho-won still looked fine as ever. Xiao Yungyun slowly closed her eyes. The moment Bang Ho-win wriggled his eyebrows, Xiao Yungyun opened her eyes again. Then she made eye contact with Bang Ho-win. No. Yu Xiaodam's voice could be heard from a distance, but it was already late. Xiao Yungyun's pupils were already losing its focus, and she had also completely stopped moving. The situation itself was unbelievable, but in the end, Bang Ho-win was filled with joy and burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. The loud laughter that was comparable to a lion's roar echoed throughout the giant rift. Everyone had no choice but to stop fighting. Their gaze naturally turned toward Bang Ho-win and Xiao Yungyun. They could see Xiao Yungyun was looking at the air vacantly with her hand still gripping her sword. Everyone could see the meaning behind Bang Ho-win's laughter. Bang Ho-win had succeeded in applying heart and mind dominating technique on Xiao Yungyun. In the end, after struggling so much, she still became like this. He glanced towards Yu Xiaodam, who was stunned stiff, before shouting towards the American hunters, New Murim League, and the Murim Hoyangho, who had lost their fighting spirit. Comrades, it's our victory. It's time to return to our homeland. Murim people who wanted to return to their hometown cheered. Then, louder than before, Bang Ho-win shouted once again. Hear me, O people of Murim who surrendered to modern society in the end. It was impossible for your lord to resist after making eye contact with me. Now do you know who is right? Murim was the world of the weak and strong. Naturally, the strongest, who is the victor, is always right. That was the law of Murim. Bang Ho-win slowly walked towards the wounded Xiao Yungyun. Every single movement of him was captured by the camera. Right, modern civilization is really comfortable. I could show what your lord, which you deeply believe, would become. The moment Bang Ho-win reached out towards Xiao Yungyun to complete the heart and mind dominating technique. Xiao Yungyun's sword slashed at Bang Ho-win's body. Chapter 128. Bang Ho-win's scream resonated through the great rift. In a blink of an eye, his left arm was amputated along with his man's symbol. The pain he felt right now was surely indescribable, and with only one arm left, he couldn't heal both of his wounds. Translator's note: for my dear innocent readers, his man's symbol refers to the lecherous thing between his legs. As Bang Ho-win shed tears of blood, he stumbled and shouted at Xiao Yungyun, who had fallen to her knees due to exhaustion. How did you do it? Just what kind of sorcery did you use? Yu Xiaodam, who ran towards Xiao Yungyun with a worried face, could only look at her with bewildered eyes. According to the information I received, Bang Ho-win's Seek Gong has an absolute effect against the opposite sex. Was it wrong? Then, a smile bloomed on Xiao Yungyun's exhausted face as she recalled the reason why she could break free from Bang Ho-win's mind and heart-dominating technique. It was because of the gap. Every human being had a gap in their heart. To be precise, it was an emotion called love. As they grow up, those gaps would be filled by people around them, but it was impossible to fill it continuously till the day they died. But it was only true for those who lived a normal life. Xiao Yungyun's life was far from a normal life. She used to be the master of the Chenma sect of Murim in the past. In those days, she commanded tens of thousands of troops who looked up to her and millions of people who believed and followed her. As she was loved by everyone and also showed love to those who follow her, she never lacked love. However, on a certain day, she lost all of her loved one because of a wicked man. She felt miserable. She lost all her motivation to keep living. Her heart quickly became empty and nothing could fill the gap anymore. Yet she was forced to live on in despair without even being allowed to die. And after some time had passed, someone suddenly came and filled her heart. He was a man who gave her another reason to keep living. He became Xiao Yungyun's everything and filled her heart without allowing anyone else to invade it. Deep down in her heart, Xiao Yungyun was aware. New Murim League, the Supreme Chenma Murim Lord, the future of the Murim people, a world where Murim people could live comfortably. She didn't need any of that. The reason why she became the Lord of New Murim Alliance was for Yu Xiaodam. The reason she was paying extra attention to the future of Murim people was for Yu Xiaodam. She wanted to achieve Murim people's dream so she could assist Yu Xiaodam's dream. Obviously, Bang Ho-win's mind and heart-dominating technique was a fraudulent mugong that could control someone else's mind regardless of their status. But what if there were no gaps at all? What if every space in their heart was filled with just one person? Yusiadam, Yusiadam, Yusiadam. Xiao Yungyun's mind and heart was already filled with that one person. No one could invade it. Even Sigma can't touch me. Xiao Yungyun took a deep breath and lifted her sword once again. Her body was filled with wounds and she was tired, but she could still fight a little more. You can't act like a man now. Hicks hicks fake crying sound, it really hurts my heart. This bitch. Bang Ho-win cursed as he clenched his teeth and tried to circulate his nigong. At the same time, Yu Xiaodam realized that the moment in front of him was an opportunity. He couldn't be completely sure what kind of opportunity it was. However, one thing that he knew was that everyone's attention was focused on Bang Ho-win. System, please help. Don't do it. It's a crazy move that will reduce your life force enormously. You could lose all the life force you've earned. It's okay. And then Yu Xiaodam shouted. Everyone listen to me. He hadn't learned the lion roar technique, but it was a very easy task to draw everyone's attention when their attention was already focused on his vicinity in the first place. As soon as everyone looked at him, Yu Xiaodam took out his equipment from the inventory. Along with a pure white glow, a white armor and a pair of white boots appeared in the air and automatically attached to his body. Yu Xiaodam drew more attention as he used automatic equipping system, which could not be explained with any science and technology. As people's eyes widened, Yu Xiaodam continued his show by taking out his white sword, the lost morning star, and pointed it into the air. Bang Ho-win has deceived you. Did you really believe what he said about bringing you back home? It's all a lie. He's just pulled you in to take advantage of you. No one believed what Yu Xiaodam said. It was only natural. For Murem people, the credibility of a Hunkyung expert like Bang Ho-win was way higher than Yu Xiaodam, who barely achieved S rank. However, Yu Xiaodam was not an ordinary S rank hunter. I am sorry, even though you told not to disclose it. If it is for you, Hunter Yu Xiaodam, it's okay. Yu Xiaodam swung into the empty air. The air crackled with a bright golden hue. Beyond that crack, another world appeared. Unlike the interior of the Great Rift, the world inside Yu Xiaodam's rift was painted in a sunset's glow. It was an unknown world where all buildings had already collapsed. Since Yu Xiaodam only requested to summon the nearest random dimension, even the system does not know where this is. However, the only fact that mattered was the fact that Yu Xiaodam had created a door to another world. No way. Did he just create a rift in the air? Then Yu Xiaodam shouted the powerful words towards the member of Murem Hoyangho. I can bring you back home. This. Bang Ho-win tried to cover Yu Xiaodam's mouth, but Xiao Yungyun squeezed out the last remaining power she had and moved in front of Bang Ho-win to block him. Even though Bang Ho-win's one arm was cut off and he was unable to use mind and heart-dominating technique, he was still able to affect a woman's heart. Seeing Xiao Yungyun slowly being pushed back by Bang Ho-win, Yu Xiaodam screamed once again. Do you understand who is the one you should believe now? If you stop fighting now, you can return home anytime you want. At that time, the bone dragon flew and scratched the ground. It had caused more casualties compared to the Civil War. If the bone dragon was left unattended more than this, a really big accident would happen. So let's close the Great Rift and go back. Shortly after hearing Yu Xiaodam's words, several Murem experts who were forced to follow Bang Ho-win started to be shaken. It's an opportunity. Smiling Shadow, who was deliberately interfering with Bang Ho-win's plan, shouted the words he had always wanted to say. Anyway, he has already become a cripple. Even if what he said to us was true, he can no longer do so since it is impossible for him to reach the realm of Shin Wikyung now. That's right, I actually didn't like following such a disgusting man from the beginning. To deceive us with such a lie. Not all Murem experts were immediately swayed by the words of the Yu Xiaodam. However, as soon as few Murem experts started to state their stance and their opinion, the situation immediately favored Yu Xiaodam. Let's take down the bone dragon and get the chance to return once more. Soon after, the hunters, the members of New Murim League as well as the members of Murim Hoyangho temporarily stopped fighting. Although they were not cooperating with each other, they began to face a common enemy, the Bone Dragon. Their individual level was very high, and because there were 10 SS rank in total, the Bone Dragon could be suppressed rather swiftly. The only problem left was Bang Ho-in. In the state where he only had one arm left and could no longer use his mind-controlling skill, he was still able to overpower Xiao Yungyun. Even though he had been reduced to his current state, his mysterious Mugong, which could make his opponent stop in the middle, and his mind and heart-dominating technique, which he had learned all his life, still remained. He only needed a simple hand movement to stop Xiao Yungyun in her trails. Damn it, what the hell is that Mugong? It is a technique that couldn't be considered as Mugong. The system tried to explain it to Yu Xiaodam. However, Yu Xiaodam couldn't listen to her explanation because in front of him, he saw Xiao Yungyun being flung to the air before crashing to the ground after she failed to defend against Bang Ho-win's punch. Yu Xiaodam didn't have enough time to take out the Winchester 777 from his inventory and aim it at Bang Ho-win. So, using the skill attached to his boots, he narrowed the distance between him and Bang Ho-win and swung his sword. Boom! Bang Ho-win stopped Yu Xiaodam's sword before aiming his fist at Yu Xiaodam's abdomen. He thought that Xiaodam's armor was nothing but an ordinary armor. Unfortunately for him, Yu Xiaodam was able to endure his punch thanks to his hero-grade armor. Yu Xiaodam once again swung his swords towards Bang Ho-win. Boom! A huge crater was created as the aftermath of the exchange. As Yu Xiaodam bounced away because of the impact, Xiao Yungyun rained a series of attacks towards Bang Ho-win with all her might. It was an attack that could cut anything in its path. You trash like bitch. Bang Ho-win endured. The pain from losing one of his arms was no longer there because his reasoning clouded by his anger. As the fight prolonged, Bang Ho-win's movement grew duller and duller. It was because he had lost a lot of blood. Moreover, the effective mind and heart-dominating technique as well as his Seekgong gradually become weaker. However, before Bang Ho-win completely collapsed, Xiao Yungyun lost all her strength and collapsed first. In the first place, it was a miracle to be able to fight against a mind-controlling sorcery this long. However, fortunately, this is the command center. The Bone Dragon has been defeated. I repeat, the Bone Dragon has been defeated. Also confirmed that the core energy of the Great Rift has disappeared and the rift has started to close. Expedition members must return as soon as possible. Because the Bone Dragon had been defeated, it was now possible to draw the picture that Yu Xiaodam really wanted from here on. What? As the hunters and the Murim people began to rush toward the exit, Bang Ho-win became quite nervous. He was no longer able to use his Seekgong, which meant that even if he captured Xiao Yungyun, he cannot absorb her Nigong and rise to the state of Shin Wukyung. In other words, it was impossible for him to return to Murim by using the Dharma's black sword in his possession. If that was the case, Bang Ho-win thought it would be better for him to escape this place first. Even if it was not Seekgong, there are many ways to absorb other people's Nigong. If only he could find an old master with a good amount of Nigong like 4 years ago. Where did she go? Bang Ho-win belatedly realized that someone was carrying the passed out Xiao Yungyun and running away. The familiar man who was carrying Xiao Yungyun on his arm was no other than Smiling Shadow. Smiling Shadow. His scream echoed loudly. However, he couldn't stop Smiling Shadow, who had run away and grouped up with the other new Murim Alliance's members in order to get out of the rift. Bang Ho-win focused all of his strength on his feet. He tried to chase Smiling Shadow in one leap and tear him to death. However, at that moment, a magic circle was created in the air. In the next moment, Bang Ho-win's body was wrapped in chains. You and your dog-like trick again. It would have been easy to tear off the chain if Bang Ho-win still had both of his arms. However, with only one arm, he couldn't unravel the strange chains wrapped around his body. However, in the end, he was still a Hunkyung expert. Even with one arm, he was able to rip the chains in no time. Bang Ho-win aimed his bloody gaze towards Yu Xiaodam, who was on the ground. He looked like he didn't have any intention of escaping the rift. What is he doing? Bang Ho-win muttered to himself as he looked at the ground with a sense of incongruity. He could see his shadow was overlapping with Yu Xiaodam's shadow. Then Yu Xiaodam laughed as he stared at the space between Bang Howin's legs. "Missy, do you have some spare time?" Chapter 129. A vein popped on Bang Howin's forehead. If he knew that Yu Xiaodam would hinder him to this extent, he would have killed him sooner.
This is.
Suddenly, Bang Howin could feel an unknown energy pulling him down from the shadow. "You're using some suspicious magic again." Bang Howin tried to break away from the shadow. He circulated his Nigong and put all of his strength into his legs.
What?
However, he couldn't break away easily. The unknown energy in the shadow was extremely thick. Yu Xiaodam smiled in satisfaction. Truth is, it was magic that he had been preparing for 6 months just for this moment. It was a binding magic that couldn't be torn apart easily. Of course, it was impossible to bind a Hunkyung expert for a long time. If it was Xiao Yungyun, if she seriously tried, she could break away from it in 10 seconds. However, his opponent right now wasn't in his top condition. He was heavily injured. On top of it, Yu Xiaodam wouldn't just let Bang Howin try.
I see.
Bang Howin's bloodshot eyes stared at Yu Xiaodam as his Nigong spread in all directions. "If I kill you, I can get rid of this annoying shadow." Bang Howin rushed towards Yu Xiaodam as he shouted. However, Yu Xiaodam had already disappeared. Quickly figuring out what's happening, Bang Howin could see Yu Xiaodam in the distance not too far from him. He kicked the ground once again and his body shot forward towards Yu Xiaodam. The ground split in half, but unfortunately his kick narrowly missed the target. Bang Howin gritted his teeth. He was annoyed. This fight was supposed to be a fight he could easily win. He only needed one proper hit. However, Yu Xiaodam, who was way weaker than him, kept slipping from his attack like a damn loach. "Do you think I can't catch you even though I only have one arm?" Bang Howin circulated all his remaining Nigong and moved rapidly towards Yu Xiaodam and swung his fist.
Boom.
However, the item skill barrier of brightness was activated. A pure white light burst out, completely protecting Yu Xiaodam from the impact. It was a skill that could only be triggered once, but Yu Xiaodam was satisfied that he could survive longer, and then Yu Xiaodam rolled over the ground and leaped into the sky. To be fair, Yu Xiaodam was quite fast. Thanks to the skill inside his boots, he was able to achieve speed comparable to an SS rank body strengthening type hunter. However, against a Hunkyung expert, his speed was like a poodle running in front of a car. Yu Xiaodam could feel the bones and feet shattering because of Bang Howin's sudden kick. In retaliation, he swung his sword towards Bang Howin. However, Bang Howin easily dodged it and crushed his wrist. After that, Yu Xiaodam could feel several hits on his abdomen before his consciousness turned dim. It was inevitable for him to get hurt. It was already a miracle that he had lasted for more than a few minutes against a Hunkyung expert. He was aware that he was still alive because of death rejection skill that had already been activated and was recovering his stamina while cutting down his lifespan. However, it's still not enough. Just a little bit more. I need to keep him busy until the rift is closed. Yu Xiaodam stood up once again. Because his right hand was broken, he couldn't wield his sword with it. That's why he pulled out the ether blade with his left hand and tried to swing it, but Bang Howin easily caught the blade with his fingertips. Bang Howin broke the blade into two and used Yu Xiaodam's own blade to stab it in his abdomen. As blood poured out from Yu Xiaodam's mouth, Bang Howin circulated his Nigong and broke away from the shadow without delay. Bang Howin turned his head and looked into the distance. He could see that the portal was on the verge of being completely closed. He felt regretful. Bang Howin really wanted to kill Yu Xiaodam, but he couldn't afford to waste any more time. He thought that even if he left him alone, he would be trapped here and eventually be killed by skeletons.
Boom.
Bang Howin kicked the ground and leaped into the air. Suddenly, the size of the portal became smaller than before. It was now at the size where only 2 or 3 adults could fit into. "I can still get out." As Bang Howin reached closer to the portal, he could see a female swordsman with golden hair and blue eyes standing in front of the portal. Her name was Celeste Costantini. However, Bang Howin didn't know about it. The only thing that he knew was the fact that she was blocking him. "Get out of the way." Bang Howin scattered his Nigong and tried to activate heart and mind domination technique to make her move away. Unfortunately, his opponent wasn't someone from Murim but rather a hunter. On top of it, she didn't make any eye contact with him, as if she already knew the condition to activate the heart and mind domination technique. Try to stop my punch then. Whether she was a hunter or something else, Bang Ho-win didn't care at all. By scanning her power, he could tell that she was only at a level of first-grade swordsman. If that is the case, he only needed to punch her once to make that cheeky woman crumble into dust. It should have been that way. Sounds of two metal clashing against each other rang as the sword which Celeste swung hit Bang Ho-win's right arm and produced a slight shock wave.
What the?
Bang Ho-win's eyes opened wide as he didn't expect her to have that much power.
This is Mugong.
A hunter with a body-strengthening ability who also uses Mugong. Bang Ho-win couldn't believe it, but it didn't matter now, because he needed to hurry. He had no time. Although he had been pushed out due to being careless and running out of Nigong, if he paid more attention, he was confident that he would be able to get rid of her instantly. However, Bang Ho-win's fist couldn't reach her. Her speed was too fast for a first-grade swordmaster. On top of it, she could also launch a counterattack against Bang Ho-win.
This rotten bitch.
Bang Ho-win circulated his Nigong and infused it into his punch. After the third punch, Celeste couldn't hold on anymore and flew back into the portal due to the impact. As she was flying back, Bang Ho-win could see her saying, "This is for my father." As the portal closed completely, Bang Ho-win's right arm, which was still stretched out because of the previous attack, was also severed. It was as if the battles up until now were nothing but a dream. The silence covered the world. Bang Ho-win, who lost both of his arms, looked into the air for a long time with blank expression. Why did it turn out like this? Even when he thought about it again, he still couldn't understand the situation he was in. Where have my arms gone? Why is the space between my legs empty? And why am I trapped here? Such questions passed through his head before, eventually, a certain face came to mind.
You see, damn.
Anger engulfed Bang Ho-win's whole body. He couldn't forgive him. He had hindered him from recovering his lost power by capturing Seol Yungyun. Now, let alone Miriam, he couldn't even return to Earth. Bang Ho-win shouted once again, as he found one thing that he could do now.
You see, damn.
Bang Ho-win turned away and ran towards the place where Yu Seodam had fallen. Even though the distance was the same, he took dozens of times longer to get there, but still, it wasn't that long before he reached there. Bang Ho-win found Yu Seodam collapsed in the same place as before with blood flowing out from his abdomen. It was as if he was waiting for him. I thought you were busy. Do you have time left?
10, 9.
Despite the situation he was in, Yu Seodam was still mocking Bang Ho-win. In retaliation, he shouted angrily towards him. I will make sure you cannot talk like that ever again. Scary Tilda, can you even do something terrible to me when you don't have that little thing anymore?
8, 7, 6.
Even while coughing blood, Yu Seodam kept blabbering. Bang Ho-win slowly approached him and said, I will make you suffer to the point where you feel death is better. Do not even think of asking for forgiveness from me.
Forgiveness. 5, 4, 3.
As if he found the word funny, Yu Seodam smiled and raised his middle finger.
This,
with a faint smile he spoke, is what you don't have now.
What? 2, 1, 0.
Bang Ho-win stretched his hand toward Yu Seodam before realizing that something was wrong. He had no arms left. In the next moment, Yu Seodam disappeared as a white light enveloped him. After belatedly realizing the situation, Bang Ho-win screamed and shed tears of blood which splattered on the floor. However, no one was there to respond to him. Dimensional travel is complete. The blunt mechanical voice tickled my ears. Seodam, you are in critical condition because you lack blood. Staying like this can be really dangerous. My head hurts because the system keeps screaming. I think I can take out a potion from the inventory and drink it. Oh, by the way, will it recover blood loss? I don't know. The world is getting darker. Everything is blurry. Is this the Earth? We have successfully transported into this world. Your goal will be complete as long as you live and can return to Earth.
Oh, I see.
It was a tougher fight than I thought. I thought I could win no matter what. However, naturally, there was no such thing as a guaranteed fight. I thought I had come to my senses the other day, but it seems like I've become quite arrogant since I could hunt protagonists rather easily. Did I forget that for a hunter, the most important thing is prudence? When I thought that my precious person was in danger, I overworked myself. It was my mistake. I was stupid. That's why it turned out like this. If I had been a little wiser, it could turn out better. Now is not the time to think like that. The system's voice gradually faded away. Why was it fading away? Where did it go? You also don't know. I don't know. I am sleepy. I think it would be comfortable if I fall asleep. Yeah, let's go to sleep. You see, Autumn, you've worked hard, now rest well. System's voice turned smaller and smaller. Professor. The world became completely dark after I saw the scene of a pure white naked girl with fluttering black hair and a bullet necklace jumping onto me. Chapter 130. In Seattle, USA. There's a university hospital that specializes in treating injured superhumans and hunters. It was a hospital that boasted a world-renowned staff lineup as well as a state-of-the-art facility. But because it was a hospital that only treated superhumans and hunters who had a unique disposition, they rarely received any patients. Even though this was the case, their facilities were always in the best condition. Anne was one of the nurses who worked at the Seattle University Hospital. She was an elite among elites, an experienced nurse who is rarely nervous even when she meets S-rank hunters who are being treated at their hospital. But today, she was particularly nervous. It was because she has been appointed to tend to the strongest hunter in the world, the Murim Lord, Seol Yungyeon. However, she wasn't alone, as there were 10 more nurses assigned to take care of Seol Yungyeon besides Anne. Apart from the nurses, there were also a doctor and a Murim counselor around, but she still couldn't help but tremble. Is this the so-called sacred pill or something like that? Well, I don't know either. Don't you know this? If you read a martial arts novel, it was something that was made at some kind of a Shaolin temple. What was it called? A Shaolin sacred pill. Maybe this one is similar to that. To think I would actually see this. It was made in the Shaolin temple to be eaten by the Lord, so don't touch it, okay? It wasn't a fake sacred pill created by a fake Shaolin in China, but it was a real sacred pill created by a real Shaolin master who actually existed in Murim. It was a valuable item reserved only for Seol Yungyeon. Shortly after, Anne took a deep breath and pushed the medical cart full of medicines, including the sacred pill, and headed to the ward on the uppermost floor, which is where Seol Yungyeon was staying. As she got closer to the Seol Yungyeon's ward, Anne could see several Murim experts who were guarding her ward. Some wore black robes, some wore modern suits, and some were completely shirtless. All of them were muscular and had a menacing look. They always glared at people who approached their lord's ward with terrifying eyes, including doctors and nurses. However, they weren't fools, so they wouldn't do something stupid towards doctors and nurses who was doing their job to heal their lord. Rather, Anne knew that they were kind. They were just a little bit scary. Oh, lady nurse, you have to properly take care of the sacred pill. I am sorry to ask when you are so busy, but are there any restaurants that sell rice soup nearby? There's none. Gosh, why are there so many things that are not available in America? The Murim experts were quite friendly to the nurses. They felt like a kind local neighbor for the nurses. But Anne knew who they really are because of what happened the other day when some reporters secretly sneaked in, hoping to get a scoop about Seol Yungyeon. After lightly greeting the Murim people guarding their lord, Anne finally arrived in front of her ward. As she knocked, she heard a voice from the inside saying, "Come in." It was a very beautiful voice that made her happy just by listening to it. When she entered the hospital room, she could see a woman with platinum hair, which were dyed slightly yellow due to the warm sunlight seeping through the open window, sitting on the bed. Anne thought that time was coming to halt. She was mesmerized by the Murim lord's beauty. If the goddess of ice were to manifest herself, would she look like this? Today's news: there was an incident where the Murim Hoyangho, who participated in the raid of the Great Rift in America, betrayed the expedition and turned around. There are many criticisms being poured out towards the United States of America, who had accepted these terrorists' entry in the nation. All the Murim people of the Murim Hoyangho were arrested by the new Murim League. Criticism is pouring out towards the United States for leaving the incident in the hands of another party, but the President of the United States dismissed it by saying, the New Murim League deserves to handle this personally. Xiao Yungyun was watching the news. The content of the news itself was roughly the same. It was all related to the great rift she dealt with a few days ago. Turns out that terrorist Bang Ho-win was actually an SSS rank superhuman. Meanwhile, praises are pouring out towards Xiao Yungyun, the Lord of New Murim League who had successfully overpowered Bang Ho-win. Has been revealed that the guild master of another league, Yu Xiaodam, is capable of creating a gap in the dimension. Previously, he was known to have succeeded in the project of turning dungeons into a guild hideout. Accusations against China are pouring. The Chinese government has officially stated that what happened in the Great Rift had nothing to do with them, but the criticisms have not stopped. The media from all over the world was insanely noisy. However, Anne thought it was only natural. In the first place, the Great Rift was a phenomena that always attracts the attention of the entire world. And currently on top of that, not only a hidden SSS rank Murim expert made an appearance, he also betrayed the expedition. Could there be any issue bigger than this? However, it only became more festive when the world came to know that it was Xiao Yungyun who successfully overpowered such SSS rank Murim expert and persuaded the members of Murim Hoyangho by revealing that Yu Xiaodam of another league could open dimensions. There was so much information, but by far, the one who received the most attention is none other than Xiao Yungyun. And for Anne, it was truly dreamlike to know that Xiao Yungyun was in front of her right now. "Excuse me, Lord." As Anne calls her, Xiao Yungyun quietly turned her head and looked at her. Her eyes carried despair and gloom. Anyone who saw those eyes would feel their heart ache. Xiao Yungyun never smiled. Anne thought that if she smiled even a little, she would be really beautiful. When she was asleep, she was like a flower fairy, but when she woke up, she felt like the embodiment of ice. When Xiao Yungyun slowly stood up, Anne could see a voluminous body that was revealed through the parts that were not covered by the thin fabric of a patient's clothing. She had felt it from the first time she saw it, but that body didn't match Xiao Yungyun's young face at all. Anne swallowed her saliva before slowly approaching Xiao Yungyun. Then the door of the ward silently opened as someone walked in. "Ah, Lord." Anne knew her. She is the Korean girl called Shin Haijai who was working as Xiao Yungyun's secretary. Shin Haijai sighed and said, "Lord, didn't I tell you that if you look so absent-minded like that, people around you will also be nervous and will be unable to do anything? Smile, smile, please smile a little." "I am trying." "Who are you thinking about?" Shin Haijai didn't ask what were you thinking about because Shin Haijai knew very well what filled her lord's mind. "No one." "As if, Lord, please stop worrying. It's Yu Xiaodam we're talking about." In fact, it wasn't just Xiao Yungyun who was worried about Yu Xiaodam. People all over the world were also wondering where he was. He is not only good with Mugong and magic, but now he can also manipulate dimensions. What is his identity? No, before that, what has happened in the Great Rift that has been closed? Meanwhile, many people are worried about Yu Xiaodam as several witnesses said that Hunter Yu Xiaodam couldn't escape from the Great Rift. But according to the chief executive of another league, Yekaterina, Yu Xiaodam would return soon, but she did not reveal the details. Coincidentally, there was news about him on TV. Shin Haijai was also curious about his whereabouts. But right now, she was more worried about Xiao Yungyun, who was suffering from anxiety thinking about him. He is a person who always fulfills his promise, so let's just believe in him and wait. Lord, you know that you're really busy right now, right? Let's finish everything before Hunter Yu Xiaodam returns. Xiao Yungyun recalled what Yu Xiaodam had told her. He said that even if he was trapped in the Great Rift, he would surely return to Earth. So he asked her to wait for him. You wouldn't always be like that, until Hunter Yu Xiaodam returns, right? She was right. Xiao Yungyun realized that she couldn't mop around forever. As the Lord of New Murim League, the things Xiao Yungyun had to do were numerous, and many of her people were waiting for her. On top of it, she was sure that Yu Xiaodam also didn't want her to be rotting in the corner like this and neglects all of her works. You are right. Xiao Yungyun, who was able to extricate herself from her depressed state, finally smiled. It was such a faint smile that couldn't be noticed at first glance. Oh my God, my God. Anne screamed internally. She felt as if the whole world had been brightened with just that one smile. Sometimes when I am having a hard time, I have a dream. Most of those dreams start with a girl. She was Reina Ju, a girl I trusted and relied on more than my deceased adoptive parents. She was someone who always cheered me on whenever I felt like giving up. When I was busy grieving over my helpless reality, she would ask me to try again. At that time, we leaned on each other and trusted each other more than anything. I trusted Reina Ju more than my own deceased adoptive parents. However, all of that ends when 9 years ago, she was swallowed by a great rift. Then the dream changes to the Hellgate raid from 7 years ago. It was a place where all terrible plagues of this world were mixed together. No dreams nor hopes could be found there. Humanity's conquest mission of Hellgate was bound to fail since it wasn't a space where humans should step on. However, I saw Reina Ju there. It was by no means a hallucination, illusion, nor a dream, because I clearly made eye contact with her. However, right after that moment, I passed out. Even now, in my dreams, I could still see Reina Ju vividly. She, who claimed to be my guardian on behalf of my birth parents, who I don't remember, as well as my foster parents who died when I was still a child, was beckoning me. Suddenly, when I was walking closer towards the Hell Gate, "The autumn don't come outside." Then a golden light enveloped my body. My eyes burst open. Just now, I think I had a dream, but I couldn't remember it. My head throbbed. When I tried to grab my head with my left hand, I felt something was pressing on it. I turned my head to look at it. There, I could see blood-soaked Araceli sleeping while hugging my left arm tightly. Why? She has been nursing you for days. She also used her own blood and mana to heal you, see Autumn. Then this blood. It's your blood. In a hurry, I checked my entire body. The wound I got from the fight against Bang Ho-Win, including the one on the abdomen, had gotten better. It was not completely healed yet, but it looked like it wouldn't hinder me from moving. Besides, the flame that floated above my head had kept my body warm, so my body temperature was also normal. See Autumn quickly extinguished that flame. She's squeezing her last bit of mana to light it for you. As soon as I heard the system's words, I raised my hand and turned the flame off. Only then I realized that the flame contained magic that preserves body temperature and recovers stamina. As soon as the flame went out, a chilling wind struck my body. At the same time, I realized that I was only able to stay warm thanks to the flame. I also realized that the flame was too small to keep 2 people warm. I hurriedly looked at Araceli's face. She was dangerously pale and cold. Sweat was trickling from her forehead. It turns out that she had covered her body with only a thin piece of giant grass. It was no wonder she had a hard time withstanding the cold. With only 1% mana left inside her body, she was in a much more dangerous state than me, who had almost recovered all my stamina. I took out a thick cloak from my inventory and covered Araceli's body with it. Then, I held Araceli in my arms to preserve her body temperature before summoning 3 flames and lit it around us. I also gently poured warm water into her mouth. Not long after that, Araceli slowly opened her eyes. She looked at me with her half-closed eyes for a few moments before opening her mouth and said in a very weak voice, "Professor." Seeing her struggling, something heavy hit my chest. "Why are you overdoing it?" Shortly after I spoke those words, I realized that I had made a mistake. Those words weren't the words I wanted to say to her. "Thank you." Araceli smiled faintly and buried her face deeper into my chest. Then, magic circles around my heart slowly started rotating. It wasn't by my will nor the flower spirit's will, but Araceli's will. She slowly recharged her mana through my heart. As her mana returned, her body gradually started functioning again. And as her body became warmer, it was noticeable that her complexion was also improving. "Professor." "Yes, Professor. I'm here, you can tell me. Don't be sick." After mumbling those words, Araceli fell asleep in my arms. I was caught up in a strange mood as I stared at her sleeping face for a long time. It's because her words about not getting sick, which were not really anything big, kept lingering in my head. It wasn't a big deal, but it touched my heart because it contained her sincerity. Suddenly, I remembered her fate, which I had seen before. Araceli Reinkel, she was an archmage who successfully saved her own world. However, after she saved her world, she chose to chase after me instead of live happily as a hero who was worshipped by everyone in her own world. I wondered why she chose to travel through space and time and wander through countless worlds. Is my existence really worth pursuing even though she had to endure many hardships and pain? I don't know. Unknowingly, I didn't move in the slightest while holding Eric Kelly in my arms until the sun rose. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the video. Have a suggestion? Let me know in the comments.